Hello, friends, and welcome to Stay Beautiful, the podcast. It's a podcast. I have a few ideas outside of the musical mold, and I expect many of you will appreciate getting a bigger picture of what makes me tick. I'll touch on musical things, spiritual things, things that are lighthearted, things that are a bit more philosophical. Kind of a grab bag, but you'll get a synopsis in the video titles. I want to start out by thanking in particular everyone who has followed me over from the Backwater J channel. Yes, for those of you not in the know, I have a larger channel which is an archive of my pre-transition work. When I let Astrid out, it seemed as though a fresh start was in order, and, well, here we are. So those of you who stuck with me, I know I threw you a huge curveball, but you took it in stride. I'm proud of you, and I love you. And I'd be remiss not to mention my newfound followers and supporters as well. Content on this channel is doing a lot better than the old one. You could chalk this up to a narrower focus, or trans being a bit of a hot topic right now. My personal theory is I'm being fully myself now, and I think that shows. Whatever the case, it's great to have you. I'd like to thank in particular Electra Ninja, Quixote, CatShark75, Claire Brown, Eugene Lin, and the rest of my subscribers I can't as of yet put names to. You know who you are. A couple announcements before we get to the interesting stuff. I have several affiliate sites you might want to check out, and they're all linked in the comments below. First and foremost, I'd encourage you to check out my SoundCloud. New music will drop there first, often weeks ahead of video releases on the channel. In fact, my next cover is on there as we speak, just waiting for you. I'm going to be looking into ways to get onto Spotify, but since much of my material is covers, and the copyright being what it is, I expect that may be limited to originals if and when it happens. Next, if you have way more money than you know what to do with, and let's be real, who doesn't have that problem? You can buy me a coffee to support the channel. As you can tell, I'm very low, approaching no budget, so every dollar helps me to build more engaging content. Finally, I'd like to announce Astrid the Store. That's right, now you too can be the proud owner of channel-themed merchandise, from t-shirts to phone cases to bottles with Bluetooth speaker caps. I am not making this up. Most of my current stock is themed around a still from the teardrop video. I thought it was neat enough to use as my banner, maybe other people might too. Oh, and I'll be phasing in more merch with the Stay Beautiful tagline, so keep an eye out for that. Speaking of segues, you'll notice I end most of my videos with Stay Beautiful. Why end on that? It's my conviction that everyone has a unique and profound beauty, and most of us have trouble seeing it. Stay Beautiful is as much an affirmation as it is a blessing, and I think the internet needs far more of both those things. It's my way of saying to each of you that I see you, and I appreciate you for everything you are, everything you were, and everything you'll one day become. Beauty is a kind word, a gift to someone in need, a shoulder to cry on. Beauty is rescuing an animal from the cold, brewing a fresh pot of tea for your guests, remaining strong in the face of adversity. Beauty is treating family like friends and friends like family. Beauty doesn't care what the mirror says, even when it's flattering. Beauty doesn't fade with age, it only fades when we let it. Beauty grows stronger, more profound, more sublime with age. It's a two-word statement, and at times it may seem flippant to hear me say it, but there's a good deal of meaning that goes into those two words, and I sincerely wish it on each and every one of you. I realize this is kind of an odd thing to put near the beginning of the podcast. Oh well, c'est la vie. And now, a word on pronouns. At the start of my journey as Astrid, I identified as a non-binary trans woman. That much has not changed. At the time, I told people my pronouns were she, he. It was more important for me to avoid the plural awkwardness of they than which gender label people chose to slap on me. I find that viewpoint changing over the months, particularly now that I'm living full-time as a woman. Every time I get addressed as a male, it feels more and more like a slight. Maybe unintentional, but it still stings a bit. Particularly as I'm already having to deal with complications from my legal identity still being male. Nothing like showing up in a skirt to jury duty and having the judge constantly address you as sir and mister and going out of his way to use your old name. In their defense, I'm not going out of my way to correct anybody. It just speaks to a profound lack of respect when people see you go out of your way to present as one gender and address you as the other, because it's easier, or they're used to it, or that's who they think you should be. Using a three-letter pronoun does not make you complicit in a lifestyle you might not agree with. It just makes you not that asshole who makes a scene about it. And for my part, yeah, I don't want to be that asshole either. Getting in someone's face about misgendering only makes me look bad, and it won't make the majority of people treat me any better, and it might push away those with good intentions and old habits. All that to say, it's she now. Just she. While I don't want to make a scene, I do want to be clear about my preferences. Call me whatever you want behind my back, but if you're talking to my face, then please respect the way I've chosen to present, even if you don't agree with it. I know it's odd for someone who identifies as non-binary to care that much, but I've realized I do. Speaking of segues, I'm going to hit on a topic today that will likely ruffle some feathers. Is God non-binary? First of all, I should specify that by God, I mean the God of the Judeo-Christian ethos. No offense against other faiths, but I should speak to that which I know best. Classically speaking, and in the zeitgeist of modern terminology, God is referred to as male. He, the Father, the Son. And many have taken offense to what seems on a surface level to be a bigoted belief system designed to promote male superiority, and, well, yes, there is an element of truth to that. But we have to look deeper here. The fundamental problem is a linguistic one. In most cultures and languages, we have created an arbitrary divide between male and female. This is seen perhaps most succinctly in romantic languages and ancient ones such as Hebrew, where even inanimate objects are referred to as masculine or feminine. With the current media focus on gender diversity and pronouns, it has become evident there's no elegant solution to this linguistic problem. Perhaps the most common nomenclature around those who fall anywhere in between is the use of they, which, let's be real folks, is awkward and often confusing due to its primarily plural usage. At least in English, the only widely accepted singular gender-neutral pronoun we have is it, and that carries the connotation of an object. As such, the default in most cases is to use the male pronoun. I'm not defending this trend, merely pointing it out. So if one wishes to convey someone of indeterminate gender or no gender at all in an easily understood manner, the default pronoun would be he. And so it goes with Scripture. Many have cited Genesis 1:27 as the basis for absolute binary gender. The Scripture states, per King James Version, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them." Now let's back up and apply a little logic to this scripture. Male and female were created in his own image. First of all, are we really going to let one little arbitrary pronoun override the actual idea being presented here? If male and female are both created in the image of God, doesn't it stand to reason that God himself contains the totality of both? Secondly, does it not suggest the possibility that there are those created in the image of God who are both male and female to some extent? I think to take a fair look at human gender and sexuality, we need to take a fair look at the underlying nature of God. Namely, this is a God who has a primarily relational existence. This is a God that before the proverbial dawn of time existed as a trinity, as three who communed as one. Would it not be reasonable for such a deity to create life in such a fashion as it was biologically predisposed to seek such communion? Namely, for males and females to seek each other out. This would provide significant justification for the sexual dimorphism which happens in many species, including our own. And yet there are a great many other ways of communion and reproduction seen in biology today. From the amoeba's lonely mitosis, to sponges which literally cannot exist without a colony of thousands, bigendered snails who can fertilize themselves, to female-exclusive lizards which rely on males of other species to propagate, snakes which denied a mate can fertilize themselves, to fish which spontaneously change sexes as the need arises. Ours is but one of many paradigms within creation, and if we read between the lines, God is expressed within them all. Now, there's a lot of buzz going on in recent years about gender non-binary, gender queer, what have you. That's a can of worms too big for the current discussion, mainly because it relies on the subjective context of gender identity. Is this inborn or learned behavior, nature or nurtured? Do we tend to determine gender by arbitrary stereotypes and social norms? Perhaps I'll come back to that question in another podcast, but for now I want to focus on the objective, namely the intersex community. Those who objectively were born, anatomically, neither fully male nor fully female. It's a minute percentage of the population, I realize, but the fact that these people exist at all begs the question. Jesus spoke of those who are born eunuchs, a category which arguably could be applied to Christ himself, who never married, who supported and embraced men and women equally. But it could also equally encompass those born intersex. Sadly, our existing medical system tends to classify these individuals as A or B, and in some cases does irreparable, non-consenting surgeries in infancy to enforce our gender norms on them. But is it not possible that these are people created in God's image, male and female? And that by so mutilating their bodies, we are mutilating the image of God within them? Laying that aside for the moment, there are passages in Scripture that ascribe feminine aspects to God, most notably in Isaiah 66:13 and 49:15, where he is compared to a mother, and Proverbs 8-9, which personify wisdom as a woman, which some have connected to Christ himself. Am I saying that Christ in the flesh was a woman or intersex? No. Historically and scripturally, we have no precedent for this. But Christ was the personification of a God who was the blueprint for all things masculine and all things feminine. He was infamous for living outside the box, notably in his connections with women, both in ministering to those in need and accepting financial support from those with the means to give it, both in defiance of societal norms. He was a progressive Jew in the first century, and I believe he intends his followers to be progressive influences in the here and now. And let's not put a left or right-wing label on progressive here. He just wants us to be decent people, whatever our gender or mix or lack thereof. God bless you, Goddess bless you. It's all really the same thing, isn't it? Still with me? Now that the heavy stuff's out of the way, I want to give you an update on upcoming content. I'll be working on the next cover video soon enough. As I mentioned before, it's already up on SoundCloud, but video will need some planning. Meanwhile, I have more gear-related content coming, starting with an offset Squire shootout. Should be fun. I'll be dropping more of these podcasts as the ideas come, probably about once a month, and of course, more silly shorts. My aim is to drop something new on the channel every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, but I'll likely miss weeks here and there as life happens around me. If you've gotten this far, you've officially made it to the end of the podcast. Congratulations! You get the honor of posting your favorite pizza topping in the comments to prove to the world that TikTok was wrong about your attention span. So stand proud, my brave and noble watchers, and know that I mean it when I say, stay beautiful.